Can't get any better, century on Nifty, double century on Nifty Bank and a triple century on Sensex. So really, one would not have expected this kind of closing. Yesterday, around the closing time, we had blood all over the place. We were closing at the lows and today we are closing at highs. If you look at the mid cap and small cap, they've also participated. I think participation picked up towards the end. But if you look at the last tally here, BSE small cap is up around 25 points. Nifty mid cap is up almost 300 points. So there was a broad-based participation. But let's look at which were the key drivers as far as Nifty or Sensex stocks are concerned. You have Sensex 30 stocks here, and the participation came from Bharti leading with 6.5%. You had auto stocks leading. In fact, the auto index was the top mover today. Maruti, Bajaj Auto, both these stocks were doing well, and also Hero Moto, Tata Motors participated. Tata Motors also gained by the positive numbers that came from overseas sales. You also had Asian Paints and Tata Steel participating here. Well, some of the heavyweights like ITC, ONGC, HDFC Bank, even RIL were relatively quiet. Yesterday, RIL was actually leading, but today it gained only 0.5%. On the negative side, we had only 5 out of 30 Sensex stocks. Coal India leading here, down 0.5%. TCS and Wipro. So IT was another sector that didn't quite participate, although declines were also insignificant, so to say.
Well, good day for the broader markets as well. We've seen a lot of green ticks coming today. Let me start off with the rice stocks, which were in focus after the news came in. There were some reports suggesting that Bangladesh will be importing rice from India, almost an additional import of 150,000 tons. So watch out for Chamalna. That was locked in upper circuit. We also spoke to the management, some bullish commentary coming up there. LT Foods is the other rice stock which was up today. That gained almost 16%. Real estate pack was in focus. Nifty Realty was your top sectoral gainer. So stocks like Puravankara, even DLF did pretty well. Puravankara was up 15%. DLF closed almost at day's high with gains of 3%. From the media pack, when you see the markets recovering, your usual suspects, TV18 broadcast, as well as you had stocks like TV Today, both of them registered good set of gains. So between 5 to 6% is the gain you saw for these two stocks. And Adani Power, this is the counter which rose, I guess, in the second half of the trading session and closing almost at day's high, a very positive sign, up almost 6%. The entire telecom pack gained traction in the last hour of trade. So Idea, that was up 5%, once again closing at day's high. And Steel Authority is one stock which so far has been underperforming, but in the recent past few weeks, we've seen Steel Authority performing well. So that was up 4%. KEC International is the other one which was up and about in today's trade. Just want to highlight 3 losers here. Jubilant Foodwork on a day like this tumbled nearly 3% and closing almost at day's low. IRB Infra was the other counter which was in focus, but the counter actually closed off its day's low after that news came in that CBI has filed a charge sheet against the promoters. And lastly, 63 Moons, where the circuit limit was revised from 5 to 20%. You saw the stock closing on a lower circuit with cuts of 20%.
Well, that sums it up. The day's trade, very, very healthy. And if we bring up the contributors list or the heat map, you will see hardly any red. This is such a mirror image. And I would say this is a bit of a surprise rally. I don't think too many people anticipated this. On hindsight, we can look back and say that bouncing off these key moving averages is something that the index would do. But this morning, I can assure you, not too many people would have anticipated that we would have a rally about 1.5% or 1.3/4. We'll talk about this with Pradeep and our guests as well. To my mind, at least, this is a bit of a surprise rally. Participation from across the board. Banks finally making a move on the top contributors list, but otherwise it was a broad-based rally which didn't have too many banks participating, and which is why while the index is up 1.2%, the Nifty Bank is not up over 1%. It's just about 0.8%. It just shows that the market moved up despite banks not performing as well. The volumes once, and also want to see what the market breadth has looked like in today's session. One, the volumes naturally high on a day like this today. The cash market is at par. It's just the FNO and options, I would presume, which would have been much higher. And the market breadth, the advanced decline ratio should come up on your screen. It stayed steady for the better part of the day, not showing any signs of buckling down, which is very, very healthy news. Last but not the least, if you just look at the heat map, sea of green, it's ending just the way it started off trade, which is very heartening. Even on the index as well, the gap stayed The number of advances to the number of declines stayed. I don't think the names moved around too much either. These were the stocks that were marginally in the green yesterday. They're marginally in the red today. But the gains that have come in, I mean, you don't normally see a GAIL moving up 8% or the Asian Paints and a Bharti Airtel moving the way they have done today. It's a very, very strong move in the session. Final thoughts from our experts. Sachidanand, to you first. What levels would you now be watching out for? Is it possible to think of higher levels immediately over the course of the next 2 or 3 sessions? Keep in mind, tomorrow it's the weekend and next week is a fairly data heavy week in terms of the US Fed meet as well as the exit polls results that might come out later on.
Well, as we have been communicating, we are qualifying this particular move as a bounce back move. But as I said, the key levels from here on would be around 10,210 to 10,230, where we see this particular move getting achieved. So probably, we are expecting this particular move to pan out in next couple of trading sessions itself. But the highlight for this particular trend should be around 10,340 mark. Until unless this particular level is not breached on the higher side, the overall or the broader trend for this particular expiry remains weak.
Okay. Thanks, Sachidanand, for your thoughts. Mayuresh, what are your thoughts?
It's going to be a data heavy week, as you pointed out. And again, in terms of the market move, my own sense is that it's going to be a range-bound market. As I've been mentioning, I do not see a structural downfall for the market or a huge correction for the markets. But again, I don't see a huge upside for the markets either. I think a lot of factors must start coming through in terms of corporate earnings, in terms of private capex, which is still a while away before it recovers. So earnings is something that the markets will look forward for in terms of a re-rating in valuations perspective. But largely, I think all the factors in terms of the Gujarat elections and any positive outcome thereof is going to have a positive sentiment effect into the markets. For the US markets, I think a rate hike is something that the markets are largely factoring into. So not expecting a huge movement happening even on the yield fronts, because the yields have largely factored in both the US Treasury and even the Euro yields in terms of the spreads between them and the 10-year US yield. So large element of the market probably believes, and is my belief as well, that it will be a range-bound trade. It's going to be more stock-specific action in my opinion.
All right, Mayuresh and Sachidanand, thanks very much for joining us today and taking us through your views on the markets.